Hey everybody, I'm Jack Hammer. It's Saturday afternoon, which means it's time to talk a little bit about what to look forward to when the 49ers take on the Arizona Cardinals tomorrow at Levi Stadium. As you know, last week the reeling 49ers desperately needed a win, and they were able to get just what the doctor ordered with the 33-22 victory over the Bears in Chicago. Now, San Francisco returns home, still looking for their first win at Levi Stadium in over a year when they host the 7-1 Cardinals. And after that win over the Bears, the mood around this team has shifted quickly from tear it all down to playoffs, with the 49ers potentially moving into the newly added third wildcard spot. With the 49ers victory on Sunday, coupled with a Panthers loss to the Patriots and a Vikings loss to the Ravens, San Francisco will take over the final spot in the NFC playoffs at the midpoint of the season. Now, here are my 5 questions to watch out for on Sunday. Number 1, can Jimmy Garoppolo back up his performance against Chicago? In the 49ers' first matchup with the Cardinals this season, it was rookie Troy Lance making his first career start. In the rematch, it's going to be Garoppolo running the offense. And coming off one of his best starts since 2019 to Chicago, last week, Garoppolo faced a team that has been really the one that he's been most successful against throughout his career. Garoppolo has won 3 of his 4 starts against the Cardinals and thrown them for the most yards and touchdowns against them of any opponent that he's faced. In 4 games against Arizona, 4 starts, Garoppolo has completed 105 of 148 pass attempts for 1,264 yards with 11 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. And that's right, Rob. I'm telling you there's a chance, and I really think there's a chance. I think the 49ers do have a chance to get to the playoffs. It's going to be a little bit of a long shot, but they can get there. It really starts with a win this week because you got to beat the teams like this, especially if, and we'll get to it, the quarterback isn't playing. Number 2, can the 49ers take advantage of the Arizona run defense? You know, the Arizona defense comes into the game on Sunday ranked second worst in the NFL against the run. They've allowed 4.9 yards per rushing attempt so far this year. And, you know, when these two teams faced off the first time, the 49ers were able to gain 152 yards rushing on 28 attempts. However, 16 of those carries came from the 49ers quarterback, Trey Lance, and the offense struggled to really get into sync throughout the game. This week, though, with Garoppolo behind center, look for the 49ers to go back to their conventional running game. We saw it last week against Chicago, where they were able to rack up 145 yards and 3 touchdowns on only 26 attempts. And the Chicago defense is a little bit better against the run than Arizona is. So definitely the opportunity here for the 49ers. And another big advantage is that Arizona will be without veteran defensive lineman J.J. Watt on Sunday. In that first matchup, it was Watt who really dominated Mike McGlinchey up front, and that shut down several plays with several, solid penetration by Watt. Really took away a lot of things that the 49ers like to do, and they really couldn't run to the right side at all because Watt just kept shutting it down. So for the 49ers, it's going to be a little interesting, though, because Elijah Mitchell is listed as questionable with a rib injury. He suffered that last week against Chicago. He currently leads the 49ers in rushing with 433 yards. But if he's unable to go, the team's going to be turned into most likely to Jeff Wilson Jr. Wilson returned to practice this week, and he was upgraded and promoted to the active roster earlier today. That seems to note that there might be something, the injury to Mitchell might be a little bit more serious than, he is listed as questionable. One of the things that Shanahan mentioned yesterday in the press conference was that Wilson's status for the game could hinge a little bit on the status of Elijah Mitchell for the game. So my guess here is that we might not see Mitchell, and if we do, it's not going to be as much as we have, and expect Wilson to take some of those carries and kind of help them out there. Number 3, how will the return of George Kittle impact the 49ers offense? Definitely something to watch for here. After missing the last 3 games with injury, we get Kittle back on the field on Sunday. He was officially promoted back up to the active roster today. This is a familiar situation for Kittle last season. You remember he missed a bunch of games, and early in the year, and he came back and got injured again. He was out for 6 weeks, but then he came back to face Arizona after missing 6 games. He went up against the Cardinals in that second to last game of last season. And in that Week 16 contest, Kittle was able to make his presence felt with 92 yards receiving on only 4 catches. And with Deebo Samuel nursing a calf injury, which is worse this week than last, according to Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers could definitely use a similar impact from Kittle on Sunday. to take some of that pressure off of the other receivers. One thing to remember, though, is Kittle's last touchdown reception has came more than a year ago, but he's one of the best run-blocking tight ends in the NFL, if not the best run-blocking tight end in the NFL. So his presence on the field should provide a boost for the 49ers running game as well. Another reason to look forward to seeing how the more conventional 49ers running game works this week against the Cardinals. Number 4, who will be the quarterback for Arizona? Kyler Murray has yet to didn't practice at all this week due to an ankle injury that he suffered against the Packers last Thursday night. Right now, the Cardinals have listed Murray as questionable for Sunday. That didn't change today. If Murray is unable to go, Arizona is going to be turning to veteran Colt McCoy. While not having to face Murray would provide a big advantage for the 49ers defense, they need to be a little bit careful here. You got to remember that last year, McCoy stepped into the Giants starting lineup and led the Giants to a victory, 17-12 victory over the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle last year in his first start. So it's not that, definitely Kyler Murray being out is a benefit. He's, Colt McCoy, nowhere near the same kind of presence on the field with his ability to run around like what you get from Murray. But McCoy can be dangerous. And in that game up in Seattle last year, what happened there was the Giants really ran the ball well. They got a couple of turnovers from Seattle and were able to cash all that in and get that victory. But so the 49ers really need to be careful here. They need to play smart and just be prepared so that if it is McCoy, that there's no letdown and they take it and take him on. The last question or the last thing to watch for is the 49ers defense holding onto the football. Talked about this in the first matchup between these two teams, but holding on to the football is huge for the 49ers. The Cardinals defense has been among the best in the NFL this season at creating turnovers, and the 49ers offense is among the worst at avoiding them. Arizona has forced a turnover in all but 2 of their 8 games so far this season. Those 2 games that they did not force a turnover just also happened to be their 2 tightest contests of the season. A 1-point victory over Minnesota in week 2, and then last week in their loss to Green Bay. On the flip side of that, the 49ers have not turned the ball over in only 2 games. Those being their victory in Chicago last week, and then also a victory against Philadelphia. The 49ers really need to hold on to the ball this week. If they can avoid turning the ball over, they have a really good shot at winning this game, and they should. My prediction for the game is 49ers 23, Cardinals 16. A couple of other notes for this real quick. If you haven't already heard, the 49ers, I've mentioned a couple of times on this broadcast, Jeff Wilson Jr. has been activated, as has George Kittle. Robbie Gould also was activated, and the team brought up from the practice squad linebacker Terrell Adams and safety Tony Jefferson II. Jefferson will most likely be the backup to Tavon Wilson, who will be starting in place of Jimmy Ward. Also, in not positive news for the 49ers, they placed Dee Ford on injured reserve, so he will be out for a minimum of 3 weeks. He has the back issues that he's had throughout his career have flared up a little bit again. According to, I believe it was John Lynch yesterday mentioned this, but the injuries with his back, actually, the concussion kind of started with an injury. It wasn't really so much of a concussion as it was just some issues with his back. They kind of were causing him to have some headache issues and those types of things. So Ford has gone on to injured reserve, and the team also waived defensive lineman Zach Kerr. Kerr was a offseason acquisition through free agency, kind of a depth piece for the middle of the 49ers defensive line, and that just didn't work out, and so they went ahead and released him. That probably goes along with the fact that they brought in another defensive lineman this week and have gone ahead and made the choice to move Eric Armstead to the defensive tackle position on a more regular basis. Anyway, so that's pretty much what we have for this week. Let's see if there's any question. Carlos asks, when do you think Lenore will actually get a shot at cornerback? I don't think he'll get a shot probably the rest of this year unless one of these veterans gets hurt. He seemed to play fairly well at the beginning of the year. He had a couple of issues. He was a 5th round draft pick, but he played well. And for whatever reason, the team decided to go with veterans over him. And so I wouldn't expect to see him play as a starter. Unless there's some major injuries and they just can't bring anybody else in. I think he's so far off the depth chart at this point that he hasn't even dressed the last 2 games. Same thing with Ambry Thomas. So definitely some issues there. Let's see. I agree with Rob on this one. Hope D can makes the best choice for his long-term health. It's all love from the Friar faithful in his recovery, and that's absolutely positive on that. I agree with him. Ford has been a really good player for the 49ers. I know they gave up a lot and gave up a lot of money for him as well. I don't think that the team makes a Super Bowl in 2019 if D Ford isn't on that roster. So definitely was worth making the move, but it makes sense not to rush things, especially with your back like that. Should Banks be playing? We haven't been able to really see Banks since training camp, because once training camp is over with, we don't get to see anything beyond really early, like the stretching and some early one-on-ones. We don't really get to see the live reps against the defense like we did during the training camp and so on. So it's hard to really say if Banks has improved from where he was in training camp. Hopefully he has. I think with Banks, it's a situation where, he definitely was struggling there. And then the injury that he suffered against the Chiefs further set him back. And, that move from one side to the other is a lot tougher than I think most people would expect it to be. And I think with Banks, we just got to have a little bit of patience with him. And I think that you might be seeing him more as a 2022 player, maybe end of 2021, if the team falls out of the playoff race. And then any prediction from Rob asked, any prediction on Jeff Wilson Jr.'s usage? And my guess would be, I think we're going to see, we might see him a lot based off of what was said yesterday from Shanahan. It sounded to me like it was a situation where if Mitchell was fine and he was going to be going, that they would be maybe a little bit slower with Wilson. But I have a suspicion that maybe his, rib injuries can be tough, especially for running backs. And I would say expect Wilson to probably touch the ball 10 times, maybe, as a little bit of a rotation along with Trey Sermon as your backs in the backfield. If Mitchell's able to go, he's probably going to be a little limited in how many times you're going to want to give him the ball. So just kind of, it might make sense here in this one to take it a little easy on him if possible and really get Wilson going. Wilson's had some good games against Arizona in the past. So, yeah, there's that part of it. And then as far as the prediction, I have the 49ers winning this game 23-16. They scored 10 the first time. This team right now, kind of in looking at it, I think the 49ers have a chance to get to 23, maybe a little bit higher than that. This is a good defense they're going up against, but Arizona has the Arizona defense hasn't been quite as strong since that game against the 49ers. And I think part of that, again, even the 49ers game, was the 49ers really hurt themselves more than almost as much as Arizona hurt them. Just a lot of self-inflicted wounds with penalties, some passes that didn't get out. Things like that. So we'll see how the game turns out tomorrow. Big game though for the 49ers. They're in must-win now mode. If they can win this week, get the 4-4, totally changes the way that you look at this team. And especially, like I said, if those other 2 games that you need to go the 49ers' way, Baltimore should be able to beat Carolina. You would think that's a matchup that favors Baltimore there, even though Christian McCaffrey is coming back for Carolina. And I really like the Patriots as well. So we'll see how that one plays out. I think the Patriots have a really good chance there. Excuse me. The Ravens are playing the Vikings, excuse me. But I think the Patriots, that game with Mac Jones and the Patriots, they seem to be on a little bit more of a roll. Their defense has been playing well. I can really see the Patriots beating the Panthers, and I can see the Ravens getting over on Minnesota. That's a good matchup for them. So 49ers just need to win, though, tomorrow afternoon, and we'll know going before the game starts what the outcome of those other 2 games. So, at the halfway point, looking at this is kind of crazy, but at the same time, with the 49ers with where they were 2 weeks ago, if they can put themselves back up into the 7th seed in the NFC at the halfway point, you have to be really happy with where they are. So, exciting game tomorrow. 49ers need to get a win at Levi's. They haven't won in over a year. Have a lot of things going their way. Have a lot of, as far as injuries to Arizona, that seems to be playing in their favor. And like I said, Garoppolo's 3-1 against the Cardinals. His only loss was the season opener last year to them. But other than that, he had the 2 wins in 2019, and he had a win as a starting quarterback. I think it was his NFL debut game against Arizona when he was with New England. So he's done pretty well against them in the past, and he'll need to carry that forward tomorrow if the 49ers are going to win. So thanks for everybody for joining on and jumping in, and we'll definitely be back tomorrow after the game with a quick recap of the game with basically the discussion to look at and see how the 49ers handled these questions and if they were able to answer them in the positive, because if they do, they should come out victorious. So keep your eyes locked over here tomorrow after the game, and appreciate everything you guys do. If you could like and subscribe and comment and do all those fun things that really drives the traffic here on YouTube, that'd be fantastic. And once again, I appreciate everybody who jumped on here on a Sunday in the middle of the afternoon to check this out. So have a great rest of your Saturday, and we'll be back at you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.